here at the Living Coast at the Brookfield Zoo for our Bringing the Zoo to You series. My name is Mike and I'm one of the animal care specialists here at the zoo. And I'm here with my teammate Mariah, who's going to be doing a feeding. We're going to do a feeding session with our newest addition to the zoo, Pistachio, our Kemp ridley sea turtles. So let's get into position. We'll talk a little bit about what we're doing, and feel free to ask questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. So Pistachio will be coming up soon, but you can see Mariah sort of getting ready there. So you can see some of the food that we'll be offering her today. So she gets squid, capelin, shrimp, and herring today, and she gets a variety. So she'll also get clam, a few different other types of fish, and Mariah also has a vitamin that you can see, so she'll be sticking that into the end of the squid. So that hopefully Pistachio will eat it without trying to spit it out. So vitamins are a good way for us to make sure that they're getting all their diet and all their vitamins and nutrients, but sometimes they don't like the taste of them and try to spit them out. So in the back of a squid is a good place to hide a vitamin. So now that we have that, we'll start our session with an auditory cue. So Mariah will be tapping those pieces of PVC together to get her to come up to station. Okay. So once she comes up, we also have a shape, which is this black triangle here. We'll put this in the water and she'll see that and come over for her food. So, she's a non-releasable sea turtle. She has some vision issues, so she can see best from her right eye. So you can see now that she's kind of coming at us from the right angle. She'll have a little bit more success in getting her food. And there you go. So she's got her capelin. We can do a little bit of tactile, so petting the shell, just to kind of build a relationship with the keeper. And then, we'll continue to feed out all the food. So there are 7 different species of sea turtles in the world. Kemp's ridleys are the most endangered and also the smallest. So they max out at about 100 pounds. Pistachio is 100 pounds right now. So she's about half grown, maybe a little over half grown. And she was actually rescued by our friends and colleagues at the Florida Aquarium in 2011. She was actually struck by a boat. So she had kind of extensive damage to her shell and also to her skull. So that's why after her rescue and rehab, veterinarians determined that she was not able to be released. She sort of failed the trials of being able to be released and surviving in the wild. So she lived at Florida Aquarium for a while, and now we're very excited to provide a long-term home for her here at the Brookfield Zoo.
So how does she know that this food is for her?
So because of the shape that we have in the water, she kind of knows that that's this is her station, kind of lets her know, come on up here and eat. We also have a couple of cow nose rays here that we feed from a station. So theirs is a yellow square shape that we put in the water, but it doesn't mean that the other animals won't try and come to another station to see if they can steal a little bit of food. But for the most part, they are well fed and know their stations and know to come to them.
So do you feed all of the animals from the same area?
Yeah, we have different sections from the top of this exhibit. So the rays will be fed about 10 feet away in another section of the tank.
Gotcha. Is she missing a back flipper, or are we just having a hard time seeing it?
Yeah, so she has all of her flippers. The front 2 flippers of a sea turtle are a lot bigger, and they're used for propulsion. So the back 2 flippers, if you can see maybe now in that angle, are a lot shorter. They're mostly like rudders that help change the direction of the sea turtle, but most of the propulsion and swimming through the water is going to be from those 2 front flippers.
Yeah, she's just turning like in the most perfect way that you just can't see that one.
She was
does she get along with all of the other animals in the tank?
Yeah, so far she's been really pretty well behaved with everybody. The rays kind of checked her out when she initially got here in September, but when they realized she wasn't going to directly feed them, they sort of lost interest. She's not as fast as the other animals, so if she was trying to be sassy, which she hasn't been, they can mostly swim out of the way.
So what's that big bump on her shell?
So as part of her injury, she does have a bit of scoliosis. So easier to see when you guys are eventually able to visit us here at the zoo, that she does have a little bit of curvature of the carapace, the top of the shell there. So another one of the reasons why she wasn't a great candidate for releasing back into the wild.
How long does it take for them to realize it's feeding time and come over to their station?
The turtles I've known have all been very food motivated, so really only a couple of seconds to come up, and they can usually hear us once we come up to the top of the exhibit, and they know to come up and get ready because it might be time to eat.
Do we have any other sea turtles here at Brookfield Zoo?
No, we don't. I think many years ago we did a Head Start program in this exhibit with green sea turtles, but green sea turtles get a little too big to be in this exhibit long term. But because the Kemp's ridleys are smaller animals, we're able to keep her here for the duration. So we're really excited to have her here.
How can you tell how old she is?
They sort of can estimate by size, but because she's originally a wild animal, it's hard for us to know exactly. So we're thinking she's in her late teens to early 20s, but it's hard to say. Cold-blooded animals don't necessarily grow in the same way that warm-blooded animals do. So sometimes a smaller animal might have just had less food or been in a colder environment or something like that. So growth is not necessarily as linear as it is with warm-blooded animals.
So if she were releasable, if she was a candidate to be released, what would that process look like? And I know she's not going to be released.
Sure.
But yeah, if she were.
So they get extensive rescue and rehab. So right now is actually a time where our friends and colleagues at the New England Aquarium are doing a lot of rescuing and rehabbing of Kemp's ridley sea turtles because they can get cold stunned along the East Coast there. So these guys live mostly in the Gulf of Mexico and then kind of up the Atlantic coast. In the summer, it's pretty warm. In the summer, it can be pretty warm along the East Coast, the water, so they can kind of migrate north. But in the winter, sometimes they don't make it south fast enough, so they can be cold stunned. Where they're too cold, they're obviously reptiles, so they have to stay at a certain temperature to function. So they get cold stunned, and the people there rescue and rescue them, and then rehab them, make sure they're in good condition, and then they bring them further south along their kind of standard habitat and release them. But there are a lot of really great turtle hospitals along the coast, especially Florida, Georgia, Texas. So if you're traveling in some of those states, you should be able to find a great sea turtle hospital. But once we're open here, definitely come and visit some non-releasable turtles at some of the AZA accredited zoos and aquariums around the country.
So what is a Kemp ridley's life expectancy?
Yeah, hard to say. Probably something around 50 years. Because they're a little smaller than some of the other sea turtles, their life expectancy is probably a little shorter. And then because of her injuries, we're going to have to monitor her health pretty closely. Thankfully, we have a wonderful veterinary team at the zoo, and we'll be doing kind of close monitoring of her health over the long term to make sure she's doing well. So we'll have to see how that impacts her longevity, but we expect to have her here for a long time to come. So.
Now, is there an area for her to get out of the water, or is she always in the water?
Well, sea turtles, unless they're breeding, pretty much do stay in the water at all times. There's a few populations of green sea turtles, like in Hawaii, that do occasionally come out to bass, but for the most part, once they climb into the water from their nests, they pretty much stay there for the rest of their lives. So a male sea turtle will never come back to shore, but female sea turtles will come back to lay their eggs and nest. So Kemp's ridleys nest kind of off the east coast of Mexico and a couple of smaller populations in Texas. And they are critically endangered, so there's something like maybe 10,000 or so breeding females left in the world, but they're up a little bit from a low point in the 80s.
Can you remind us how big she could potentially get?
How big? She can get up to about 100 pounds, maybe a little bit smaller, and about 2 to 3 feet of carapace length, which is the shell, so not including the head and the tail.
How long can a sea turtle hold its breath?
So when she first came, she was mad about her flight. So she was flown here by a nonprofit called Turtles Fly 2, which we really were appreciative of them bringing this turtle from the Florida Aquarium to us here at the zoo. And they fly all kinds of rescued sea turtles around. So she was a little mad about being flown. Obviously, they prefer to be in the water. So she was kind of pouting at the bottom. So she would hold her breath for about 45 minutes or so. But depending on the species of sea turtle, they can hold their breath for a lot longer. Leatherback sea turtles can dive like thousands of feet looking for sea jellies and hold their breath for a really long time. But the coastal turtle species, like greens and loggerheads and ridleys, usually won't go for more than an hour, but they probably could if they really had to.
When and where was she rescued?
She was found off the coast of Tampa, and this was in 2011.
Where'd she go? Oh, she's right down there. What's your favorite thing about Pistachio?
She's got a grumpy little face. She's pretty adorable in her grumpy face kind of way. I think it's really great that we're able to provide a long-term home for an animal like this that wasn't able to be released. So I think that's kind of a wonderful thing, and it's great that you guys can learn about her and come visit her here as well.
And what's her favorite food?
Her favorite food, so in the wild they eat something like 80-something% crab. So here at the zoo, the shrimp is probably the closest thing we have to that. So she loves her shrimp, but she likes inverts as well. So squid and clam are some of her other favorites. She'll eat fish, and it's important for variety, but mostly she likes to eat her other stuff. We've been trying a little bit of vegetables. Again, it's a very maybe small portion of the diet in the wild, and she treats them about the same way as some kids treat their vegetables. So.
I don't blame her. And how much does she eat every day?
We give her about 200 grams a day of that mixed food with the vitamin, and then we have occasional fast days that might kind of imitate a day in the wild where she wouldn't have been able to find a meal.
So the area that we're in right now, is this her main habitat?
So this is, we call it an open ocean exhibit. It features sort of some kind of Gulf Coast fish, fishes, and it's about 40,000 gallons. It's salt water. It's kept at about 75 degrees Fahrenheit.
Where do Kemp ridley sea turtles live in the wild?
Sure. So they breed on beaches off the coast, the east coast of Mexico, and there's a kind of a small population in Padre Island in Texas. But then when they hatch, they make their way into the Gulf of Mexico, and then they can kind of work their way up the east coast of the Atlantic. So up to maybe Canada on a rare occasion, but definitely up to like kind of New York-ish area, maybe Maine on a really warm summer.
And let's do one more question.
Sure.
So aside from size, what are other ways that you can tell all the different sea turtles apart?
So you can count scutes, which are the different scales on the shell. Their faces are a little different. Something like a hawksbill will have like ridge scutes along the side of their shell. So primarily size, but also vaguely their appearance as well, and then kind of those closer characteristic like scute counts and stuff like that would be a good way. Well, thank you so much for joining us here behind the scenes of the Living Coast. We hope you learned a little bit something about sea turtles today, and we're excited to have you back as soon as we are